Okay, our question is Toronto safe for cycling? That's what we're asking you tonight. We'll go to the calls in just a few minutes. First to Fred Stabinsky. I interrupted you. You wanted to make, I think, a general statement about bicycle safety.
Exactly. Just generally, safety on the road for cyclists, it's a variety of factors that work together. And time again, research out of cities in Europe where cycling is safer, they show a few common elements. Dedicated facilities for cyclists, traffic laws that...
You mean lanes? Is that just the fancy way of saying lanes?
Sometimes they're separated.
Why don't we just say lanes then? Wouldn't that be simpler?
There's
Sure.
there are other things as well, other than lanes, things such as sharrows, which is a new paint technique that's being used, which is kind of like a chevron pattern on the road with a bike symbol that indicates a shared use roadway.
Yeah, but it's still a matter of a lane, that's all I'm saying. Anyway.
Just quickly, so that sort of thing encourages cyclists because their perceived danger is reduced. They feel safer. So you have more cyclists on the road.
If you feel safer, you're going to operate the bike in a safer way, aren't you?
Probably,
you're not going to be so frenetic and panicked by cars that are too close to you, that sort of thing?
I don't completely agree with that. Some people feel a false sense of security sometimes in a bike lane, and they feel they can take more liberties than they would perhaps
which would be exactly the wrong thing to do, wouldn't it?
The worst thing out of bike lanes is people weaving out of a bike lane and not looking behind them to see what oncoming traffic.
Yeah.
So that's.
And I think there needs to be some driver education. You would know about this, Margaret. Needs to be some driver education about, for example, those dedicated lanes. The car is not supposed to be there, right?
That's right, yeah. I actually did bring in a copy of the official driver manual where I flagged the spots that they mentioned cyclists. There's 6 of them, and most of them are redundant.
Well, it's one thing to read it, it's another thing to obey it when you're out on the road, right?
Yeah, I just think there could be a lot more inclusions of cycling right from the get-go when people are getting licensed, when they're doing their theory tests and whatnot. If you go to somewhere like my brother, when he moved to England, said the driver test there, like almost half the questions have to do with pedestrians and cyclists. Yeah. Whereas here we get 6 mentions and most of them are redundancies.
Here I think we think of pedestrians as a minor annoyance when you're in your car. Oh, look at these people, they're in my way.
Until you're that pedestrian yourself.
That's right.
Oh, I know, then it's amazing how easily you can be converted to the other side. Isn't that true? Yeah. Okay, here's Troy calling from Scarborough. Troy, what do you think? How safe is cycling in Toronto?
Well, I think cycling is as safe as the cyclists want to react and obey the law. I'll ask a pointed question to Mr. Heaps there.
Okay.
Is a cyclist subjected to the Highway Traffic Act when he rides his bike on the road?
You already know the answer to that, don't you, Troy?
Oh, I do, because 1 in 9 maybe obey it. The rest don't.
Okay, good point.
I'm a professional driver. I have no choice. I have to drive a vehicle on the road every day.
Right.
And I'm constantly avoiding stop sign running, red light running.
Yeah.
A bicyclist is a vehicle when he wants to be. Yeah. If it's a crosswalk, he sticks his arm out and drives across it as a crosswalk, and you have to jam the brakes on.
Still mounted on the bike,
and you know what? I give way. I'll give a lane. It's his lane. I'll give the lane. But there's got to be a comparison. Now, the recent argument that we've just had recently in the city of Toronto is red light cameras coming in for intersections.
That's right.
How do you combat that? License plates of cars. Why aren't bikes license plated?
Oh, we've been through this. We've been around
I know we've been through it, but you know what? There's no accountability for a bicyclist in Toronto.
I agree with that part.
They just completely abandon the law.
Troy, I get it, okay? Thank you very much. Adrian Heaps, what do you say to that?
Well, first of all, I think I have 2 members of the cycling committee here with me tonight, Margaret and Fred, and actually our last meeting we did talk about a much more vigorous enforcement campaign and working with the Toronto Police Service to do that.
Is it getting any worse, or has it just always been fairly?
Well, no. There's more traffic in Toronto, so and there's also more cyclists out there. So you're going to see more incidents of these kinds of things happening.
As soon as you increase the numbers on anything, you'll get more abuses.
I just do want to answer that. When a cyclist is on the road, he or she is subject to the same provisions of the Motor Vehicle Act as anyone driving a car.
The laws apply.
Yeah. And police do stop it, and they do ask people to prove their identity.
Yeah. Anything to add to that, Fred?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that there's been a few studies undertaken in Canada that show that 50% of cyclist collisions were due to the cyclists making some sort of error, breaking a law, something like that. So it relates to safety. You know, cyclists who are following rules of the road and using common sense and sort of knowing what to do to be safe, you know, end up being safer.
So you say that's 50%. So that means in half the cases, the cyclist did something wrong, and in half the cases, the vehicle did something wrong?
Exactly.
Is it right down the middle like that, right?
Well, yeah, but I think that's what Fred's getting at is that we have driver's education. We need bike education as well.
Yeah.
Most people who get on the bikes for the first time, there's a huge gap from the first time they got on a bike when they were a kid
Yeah.
to the time they get on it when they're an adult. Whereas with a car, you have a graduated license. I'm all for a bike education.
People who say it's like riding a bike, you never forget. Well, yeah, but you get rusty, right?
Yeah.
You just forget everybody else.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, and there's a lot more traffic volume now as well. So
Yeah, it's
if
a
you
bigger
haven't ridden-
challenge, isn't
yeah,
it?
if you haven't ridden in heavy laden traffic streets, then it's a big difference than a side
Yeah.
street when you're a kid.
Okay,
going
let me
for a
get
ride.
some more calls on here. Here's Andre calling from North York. Anders calling from North York. Anders, what do you think about cycle safety in Toronto?
Toronto is very safe. I cycle to and from work and school all the time, and I cycle on the sidewalks because I live on Finch West. I live near Steeles and Dufferin. The roads are appalling, especially the section of the road that cyclists have to traverse on.
Right.
Frayed concrete, frayed asphalt, potholes. It's just not safe. It's safer to go on the sidewalk.
So you go on the sidewalk.
Is there anything from a bylaw standpoint preventing a cyclist from going on the sidewalk? Because it's not enforced. I'll hang up.
All right. You'll hang up, and we won't give them your phone number or anything, Anders, okay? Because you can't do that.
It's against
Against the law.
Yeah.
And that's a simple truth.
Now the
right
law, the law allows little kids to be smaller. It's based on wheel size,
there.
right?
Exactly, and so kids on tricycles, but normally downtown you won't find kids on tricycles, going at Queen and Yonge. I do share his concern. If there are potholes on a bike trail or a bike lane or on the road, it's the same repair. If somebody phones that in, we'll get into it within 5 days.
But Evelyn, a lot of people do ride their bikes on the sidewalk because they think it is safer,
Yeah.
and in some cases maybe it is. You know where it's unsafe though, if you come to you're crossing the road and you just keep going, riding your bike right across the road from the driver. The poor driver has no way to gauge where the heck did you come from. He's accustomed to having people walk across, and when a bike shoots across, that's a common. That would be a common mistake that would cause a lot of accidents, wouldn't it?
That's one of the most common ways of a cyclist being injured is when they pop off the sidewalk at an intersection and a car that's not expecting them turning right or even going straight.
Yeah. So ironically, what you think is safer, at least at the intersection, isn't safer at all.
Well, and it creates an unsafe atmosphere for pedestrians as well.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll get calls tonight from people who have been hit by bikes or almost hit by bikes. I mean, because some of the people who ride the bikes on the sidewalk, they're going lickety-split.
Yep.
They're going very fast as well and could cause serious injury to a pedestrian. Does it happen often that the pedestrians are injured by bikes on sidewalks?
Well,
Do we know?
We don't have.
Let me go back to your database,
Back
Fred.
to
Do we
the
know
data.
that? Do we know anything about that?
About injuries with pedestrians.
Involving pedestrians and bicycles.
I don't have any numbers on that.
Yeah.
One number I will mention is that there are 7 to 8 times as many collisions involving cyclists due to sidewalk riding versus the road, and that's a huge number.
But it's not a collision with a pedestrian, it's a collision with a car at a corner. Is that is that what we're
with other
talking about?
vehicles, yeah.
So it definitely isn't safer. Besides that, it's against the law.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough.